And so we are on the brink of an election. In less than 30 days, we're going to have a new president. And we're going to have to submit to one of them, to Hillary or to Trump. Our posture, our heart should be in the place of understanding, how are we going to respond to one of these two? Where you say, well, I don't want to submit to bad government. I'm just going to be independent in this. I'm not going to vote. Now, I don't think that's very godly. But notice, you need to submit. What about bad government? Well, do you know at this time when Peter was writing this, Nero was in office. He wasn't in office for 4 years. He wasn't in office for 8 years. I mean, like the worst Roman emperor that ever lived was in office from 54 to 68 for 14 years. Nero killed his mother, burned her like a torch in the gardens of Rome. He killed his brothers. He killed others. He was married to women. He was married to men. He would actually dress up like a woman and walk around the Roman Empire. Right? So when Peter is writing this, and he's writing to these Christians, and he's saying, submit yourself, he said, yeah, that guy who's running around in that dress, yeah, submit to him. So how do we live in this time when the leadership of this country seem far from leadership, right? Like, have you been watching the news? Have you been looking at Facebook? Have you been looking at all the things that have been going on? The emails, the locker room talk, all these things that's happening with one of the two that's about to be our president, right? So one of them is going to be our president. On a serious note, here's the Christian. Listen, here's a little side note. When you go to the booth, you go to the booth thinking Bible. That's how you go to the booth. And there's some things that God has put in place. God talks about the sanctity of human life, the sanctity of marriage, and the sanctity of religious freedom. When you go, that's the way you should be going into the booth to nominate someone in this area. Yeah, God is in control sovereignly. He's already chosen. We all don't know who it is. But we have an obligation. So what is our obligation as Christians? Here go our obligations. I got something for you. For whoever's in charge, number one, 1 Peter 2:1 says, pray for our leaders. So the believers, what are we to do? We ought to pray for our leaders. Here's the second thing. Pray for the person made in God's image. Listen, that person ultimately is someone who's made in the image of God. Pray for them. And I know we have a lot to say. There's a lot that's going on. But we ought to pray for them. As Christians, this is our obligation. Number three, we ought to pay taxes, Romans 13:6. The next one is this. Honor and respect the office that God has instituted. So we have a government structure. We ought to submit ourselves to it. But as Christians, these are our obligations to these offices. You know, I had a pastor friend. He used to joke around about how he would try to coach his congregation. He'd be like, listen, I'm not telling, and this was when some certain people was in office. He said, now listen, I'm not telling you how to vote, but all I'm saying is stay out the bushes.